Welcome back. The riders for Moto 2 are on the line. This moto would consist of 125s and 250s. For the U.S., it was Rick Johnson on the 250, and back for his second ride of the day, Bob Hanna on the 125. The gate went down, and Moto number 2 was underway. The rain was still coming down. The mud at the first turn was deep and slippery, but the entire field made it through. Both U.S. riders were close to the front. Before the moto, Rick Johnson talked about the importance of a good start in a race with these type of conditions.
I put a lot of emphasis on the start because if you're in front, you're the one throwing the mud. If you're behind, you're the one catching the mud. And I make a real hard effort in the beginning of the race to get myself to the front of the pack. And when I pass people, I don't mess around. I don't follow them and push them like I would on if it was just a tacky day where it's not a lot of mud and not a lot of slop.
Rick Johnson wasn't messing around on this day. During the 86 and 87 seasons, Johnson was the dominant force in U.S. motocross. The Honda star took the lead in the second moto, and despite the conditions, began pulling away from the rest of the field. That's Davy Strebos, the 125 rider from the Netherlands. He was leading the 125 class, but Unadilla's favorite son, Bob Hurricane Hanna, took over. With Strebos out of the running, the team from the Netherlands suffered a serious setback. As in most sports, one player's problem is another player's success. And in this case, Bob Hanna and the U.S. team were the benefactors. As a result of Strebos' problem, Bob Hanna and Rick Johnson were leading their respective classes. You can bet, however, that neither Hanna or Johnson were feeling overconfident in these treacherous conditions. The best in the world were right behind them, and they knew it. That's 250cc world champion Eric Gabors from Belgium with the yellow jersey breathing down Johnson's neck. Gabors' teammate and first moto winner, Georges Jobet, moved to the edge of the track to cheer Gabors on. Before the moto, a clean Eric Gabors told us why the motivation for him and his fellow countrymen was so strong.
Just look at the past and you know why. Because the Americans have been winning 5 years now in a row, and you have to do something about it. If you have a fighting spirit, or if you're a real sportsman, you don't let go. You try to improve and try to do better than the competition.
Sometimes you can try too hard. Gabors went down. The muddy Unadilla track was claiming even world champions as its victims. The question was whether Gabors would be able to hold on to second. The answer was no. John Vandenberg, the Dutch 250 rider, bobbled, and Bob Hanna moved into the lead in the 125 class, and an amazing third overall. The Hurricane was putting together an unbelievable ride. One of the reasons many feel Hanna is the best that ever laced on a motocross boot is his dedication to testing the motorcycle. The site, Carlsbad, California. For many years, the home of the U.S. 500cc Motocross Grand Prix. On this day, though, there were no crowds, no applause, no trophies. Yet the rider on that Suzuki was riding 10/10ths, all out. This is what testing is all about. If you don't go all out, you can't test the integrity of the motorcycle and its collective parts. Hanna loves the challenge. Besides, what's that old saying? Practice makes perfect. Pat Alexander, American Suzuki's motocross team manager, keeps times. But when it's right, Hanna knows it, and the lap times can become irrelevant. Having a rider like Hanna doing development has made the Suzuki line of production motocross bikes more competitive with the other Japanese brands.
Bob's helped us develop the RM motors and the suspension and just about every aspect of the bike, from brakes all the way down to engine power. He's really been something special for us.
Bob Hurricane Hanna has been special for anyone who derives pleasure from watching the best in action. Just ask the fans who attended the 87 Motocross the Nations.
We'll return to the 1987 Motocross the Nations as the best of American motorcycle racing continues on ESPN right after these messages.
Welcome back to ESPN's Best of American Motorcycle Racing. I'm Bruce Flanders, and we're in the closing stages of Moto number 2 of the 1987 Motocross the Nations. On the muddy Unadilla track, the battle continued among the three countries that were favored. The host team, the U.S., Belgium, and the Netherlands. In Moto number 2, however, it was all Team America. Even though you cannot tell who's who, underneath the mud is number 2, Rick Johnson, leading the 250 contingent and overall moto leader. There's Bob Hanna. He's first in the 125 class and, believe it or not, third overall. This format with 3 motos, with 2 classes per moto, was first used in the 1986 Motocross the Nations. Let's go back in time and relive Team America's victory in the 40th running of this prestigious event. Italy served as the host country. Although it cannot be proven, it's generally accepted that the change in format in 85 and 86 was an attempt to nullify the American dominance. It was felt by many that the European strength in the 125 class, combined with a break or two in the 250 and 500 classes, could possibly halt the U.S. win streak. Riding for the U.S. was David Bailey on the right, Rick Johnson in the center, and their Honda teammate Johnny O'Mara. In the first moto, the 125s would run with the 250s. The 48-rider field dictated a two-row start, with team members lined up one behind the other. The Americans, with O'Mara in the front, were on the extreme right of your screen. O'Mara on the 125 gated perfectly and immediately made room for Johnson on the faster 250. With a thank you very much, Johnson blasted into the corner number one with O'Mara on his rear wheel. When the dust had cleared and the front runners had sorted themselves out, Johnson, number 2, was in second, and number 3, O'Mara on the 125 was in fourth, but not for long. Within 2 laps, the Americans were in first and second. They took control of the race and held it. The rout had begun. For the second moto, O'Mara would start behind number 1, David Bailey, who was riding a 500. In the group were no less than 5 world champions, with a combined total of 10 world championship titles. David Bailey was first off the line, with O'Mara close to mid-pack. The 125s were no match for the powerful 500s, or were they? Bailey quickly opened up a big lead over the rest of the field. Behind him, though, a battle was shaping up. Number 42, David Thorpe, was in second, and number 10, George Jobet, in third. In fourth, and how he got there no one knows, was the O-Show in his 125. Finally, the pressure of the battle took its toll. Belgium's 2-time world champion Jobet went down. O'Mara sailed by into third. For the next several laps, O'Mara hounded Thorpe. With just 3 laps remaining, he passed the Englishman, and once again, American riders were in first and second. Bailey won the moto, but it was Johnny O'Mara on his little 125 that stole the show. The rout was well underway. The third moto was for 500s and 250s. Bailey started in front with Johnson behind him. Both riders narrowly avoided a first corner pileup, but after that it was clear sailing. Bailey took the lead and left the rest of the field in his dust. By lap 5, Johnson had moved to second, and that was that. On the last lap, Bailey waited for Johnson. They crossed the finish line together, and the rout was completed. Even the European rules makers couldn't hold back the American juggernaut. American dominance was stamped firmly on what had been in the past European domain. Back to the action of the 87 event and the Johnson-Hanna American 1-2. Johnson and Hanna were in the driver's seat, but as we have seen earlier, anything could happen. After the first moto, the U.S. team found themselves behind the Belgians and the Dutch. To get back into contention, they needed a 100% effort, and that's what they got from Johnson and Hanna. The rain was still coming down, but it didn't dampen the spirits of the huge Unadilla crowd. They were cheering for Hanna. They were cheering for Johnson. As both riders rounded every corner, accelerated down every straightaway, the chant of USA filled the air. Johnson took the checkered flag in moto number 2. He won the 250 class and was the overall moto winner. A little further back, Bob Hanna won the 125 class. Moto 3 would decide the team championship.